that's an opinion. But just because you have an opinion doesn't require me or anybody else to silence our opposition to it. I'm sure that if you'd done a poll in 58 or 59, 79% of the people in Alabama thought that segregation was a great idea.
Well, our viewers have opinions about the boycott and our congressional delegation. For example, Poppy writes, I still support SB 1070. The boycott that was called against Arizona by Raul Grijalva will cost the state money, but in the long run, it'll save money that's being used on hundreds of thousands of illegals that are collecting social services, such as free schooling, lunches, Section 8, WIC, welfare, and our ever-increasing health care services. Still ahead, boycott backlash looking outside of our state. Would they feel the same if they lived here?
Memorial.
Well, there are a number of legal challenges against Arizona's illegal immigration law. The cities of Tucson, Nogales, Flagstaff in our state, to name a few. Today, the governor issued an executive order creating a border security and immigration legal defense fund. Yesterday, the governor announced John Bauma, chairman of the law firm Snell and Wilmer, will represent her in the federal lawsuits. Bauma's saying his firm will do much of that work, though, pro bono.
So what about Mexico now? What are the immigration laws there, and are they tougher than here? We did some research. We found it depends on who you ask.
Now, first off, the Mexican consulate did not want to discuss immigration with us, so we asked an attorney who practices immigration law on both sides of the border, and he thinks it's easier to deal with Mexico. A professor at a Washington, D.C. graduate school who writes about Mexico's laws strongly disagrees.
They're tougher on the books, and they're tougher in the way they're enforced. Mexico deports more illegal aliens per year than the United States does.
I think it's simple for a client to obtain a Mexican visa than to obtain a U.S. visa. It's more complex to obtain a U.S. visa.
Amnesty International recently released a study condemning Mexico's treatment of Central Americans who illegally cross Mexico to reach the U.S. Amnesty International calling that a human rights crisis. People nationwide are talking about 1070. Opinions from other states and here on the streets of Tucson.
We think this is a mistake. It's bad for the Arizona economy. It's terrible for Arizona law enforcement, and it's just a wrong direction for us to be going in as a country.
People are going back to California or to New Mexico or somewhere where they don't have this law.
They cannot say that feeling because they have never been in that point. So, I think there's more, that they need to know.
While Arizona is ground zero for the debate, several other states, more than a dozen, are considering laws as well.
Right now, Utah, for example, traditionally one of the least diverse states in the nation, now has a growing Hispanic population. Here's News 4's Martha Vasquez.
Utah is one of the reddest of the red states, as conservative as it is religious. But there's a different sound in the air these days. Fear. Just listen to Hispanic talk radio.
There are people literally afraid to leave their houses.
Utah, once immigrant friendly, is hinting it may pull the welcome mat, just like Arizona.
I want people that are here illegally out of the state of Utah.
And Utah isn't alone. At least a dozen other states are talking about cracking down on illegal immigrants. And while they don't all necessarily agree with Arizona's approach, they all agree something has to be done. Community centers like this are flooded with people wanting to learn English.
You have to learn the language. You have to learn to communicate. You have to learn to be involved in the community, or you're not part of it.
But half the students here are illegal. Russell Moore says his neighborhood has changed, and so has his business. He's a contractor, but he says he can't compete anymore with companies hiring illegal immigrants on the cheap.
I'm tired of the rhetoric. I'm tired of the finger pointing, and I'm tired of government not figuring it out.
Lori Robinson's husband and two stepchildren are undocumented. She lives in fear every day.
Let's just wait and see what the immigration reform is going to bring. What does wait and see mean? Wait and see means wait and worry.
And wonder if Utah will come up with its own answer or follow Arizona's lead. Martha Vasquez, News 4 Tucson.
All right, and finally this evening, before we leave you now, we want to take one more look at the law and its key points.
That goes into effect barring legal challenges July 29th. Law enforcement agencies across the state must have all the officers trained in enforcement prior to that, and the governor saying that racial profiling will not be tolerated. And of course, you know, TPD's police chief, which you'll hear from tonight at 10, is saying that's tricky because every encounter has to be documented. So every word that these officers write down could put them on the hook. So it's tricky, and more from him coming up.
A lot of adjusting ahead, yeah, a lot of new moves that officers are going to have to make, and we'll stay on top of this issue, certainly with our regular coverage.
Thanks for joining us for the special edition of News 4 Tucson, A Nation Divided.
And we'll see you tonight for News 4 Tucson at 10. Good night.